So I started following the people who talked about peak oil, and they alerted me to the fact that the housing crisis was going to happen. So I sold my house right at the top of the housing market, and they alerted me to the fact that the stock market was going to crash. So I pulled all my money out of the stock market right before that went down the tubes.
Do you think that if the world accepted the situation of resource depletion and was ready to take action, that we could successfully transition into a sustainable lifestyle with little hardship? In my opinion, the sooner we start, the less difficult it's going to be, but even if we start now, it's not going to meet the definition of little hardship. It's too late for that. I think of it as a gigantic game of dodgeball, you know, going from 7 billion to 1 billion. I don't, you know, maybe I shouldn't try to make fun of it, but that's the way I think of it. Wow, this is just like 10th grade again, you know, where I'm in a game of dodgeball and all the jocks are throwing balls 100 miles an hour at me, you know, wow.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's right. That's a good analogy because what you have now is you have an economic elite who's obviously got to be aware of all this, but there's factional disputes between them. But let's look at this one particular way, kind of the dodgeball players that you're talking about. You've got your superpower nation states with the ability to go out and extract energy with their militaries and their economic might. And you have kind of a new player in the game, that's China. And China doesn't want to be left out. They've, you know, when they finally sold themselves to the West that they could be a manufacturing platform, they're using that to basically enter the game, become an economic player themselves in such a way where when they think the music's going to stop, they don't want to be somebody who can be pushed over. So I think that, you know, that's the kind of chess game they're playing. They want to go grab as much as they possibly can because I think they know that this is not going to last forever.
A shock for most people to find out that what they have to do every day is going to be not pushing a mouse around and staring at pixels on a screen, but, you know, using a shovel and a hoe and out in the sun and the cold, and homes may not be heated pretty soon. We don't have root cellars. We don't have ways to store our food. Yeah, it's really bad, and what worries me is it could come on very sudden because they talked about the net energy cliff being in 2013, and if that's true, that means we have about a year or so, or maybe 2 years, until things just go haywire, and all of a sudden, you know, oil hits $1,000 a barrel, and who knows what, and nothing functions anymore, and none of our structures work, and none of our farms work, and our roads are useless, and we have a lot of people who are waiting for the recovery.
We've kind of thought the cliff was going to show itself, you know, the steep end of the cliff was going to show itself a few years back, and this economic collapse has sort of kicked the can down the road. And you know, the question mark is still, when does this happen? When does this, the EROI numbers get so bad that there's not enough cheap energy to supplement this expensive, you know, non-traditional energy that we're extracting? And like just the other night, I was at my local legislative district meeting, and you know, the senator from my district is trying to sell us on fracking, hydrofracking, to get natural gas. And he says the reason why you're paying such cheap natural gas right now is because of hydrofracking, and he's pushing it. And 4 bills have just cleared their first hurdle in the state house. Idaho's an oil and gas business now, folks. And so they're getting the regulations in place to try to facilitate that. because everybody's on the gold rush. It's like a gold rush. But remember what happened to the gold rush. It peaks and then it drops and then it never comes back.
And the truth is, it's not the fracking that's giving us the cheap gas, it's the investor dollars that are subsidizing the fracking, which is bringing gas in at like $7 a
Right.
therm, but they're only selling it for $2.50 or $3 a therm. It's being subsidized by investor dollars, and that's going to run out pretty soon.
What was it, John Michael Greer is saying that it looks like the next bubble to pop after the housing bubble that popped in 2008 will be investment in fracking type operations. That's a bubble that can't last much longer because of that disparity that you just talked about.
Right, and you know, and because the EROI, and when we say that, it's an acronym we use, they're called Energy Return on Energy Investment. But the EROI on this fracked energy is below 5 to 1, whereas your sweet crude is up to 40 and 30 to 1. You get 1 barrel in, 30 or 40 out. When we began this escapade, you know, back in the late 1800s, it was 100 to 1. So it looked like it would never end. And now it's down to where a good day is 40 to 1, 30 to 1 stuff, and everything in between. And like Bob's saying, it's all being subsidized, and it's being subsidized by, you know, cheap energy, where you've got, you know, your sweet crude coming in, and then when you balance that in with this expensive stuff, you get your market clearing barrel, and then the speculators go have at it, and they might drive the price up a little bit, which obscures the true naked price of a barrel of oil, which makes it more difficult for us to be able to tell this tale of what's going on, because people can point at speculators and they say, if you just get rid of them, and we should, but if you just get rid of them, then, you know, oh, we'll be back down to like $20 a barrel of oil and everything, and we'll be back to paying $1.50 a gallons. I mean, we hear all these crazy things, and it's just not true. Again, against the energy illiteracy in the media discourse.
So far, most of the focus has been on climate change, and especially within the scientific community. When I first started studying this issue, I found that to be true, and I thought, well, why don't the scientists talk more about resource depletion? Why all this effort on climate change, but so little on resource depletion? I'm glad, though, that seems to be changing. For example, in just the last month, prior to today, there have been 3 scientific journals, peer-reviewed scientific journals, that have been talking about resource depletion. In Science magazine, there was an article called "Technology is Turning U.S. Oil Around, but Not the World's" by Richard A. Keir. In Nature, there is a article called "Climate Policy, Oil's Tipping Point Has Passed" by James Murray and David King. In the Energy Journal, there's an article called "Oil Supply Limits and the Continuing Financial Crisis." So it's starting to happen. We're starting to see more articles about this in scientific peer-reviewed journals, which really makes me wonder, wow, that's about time. I was thinking, what am I missing that the scientists aren't talking about this? But I wasn't missing anything. They're just now getting around to it. I don't know why they're kind of late to the game on that. Well, agriculture is currently completely fossil fuel dependent, not only for the tractors and the machinery, but also for the fertilizers. I don't think we would be able to fertilize our depleted topsoils without huge fossil fuel inputs.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's almost everywhere in the agriculture industry. Is energy, you'll see a petroleum product.
What value, if any, do CSAs, community-supported agriculture, in confronting confronting declining resources?
Okay.
They would have a lot of value, I would think, if we could scale them up, but I don't know if we can scale them up to the point where we can prevent food riots.
Yeah. I think there's one kind of like positive note that right now in the state legislature there is a bill. It's called the Freedom to Farm Act, and it is a deregulating bill that allows for the direct relationship to be created between the farmer and the consumer directly. No supermarket or shopping market in between. And this will free the hands of those that want to go visit the farmer, and if he sets up a food stand out right on his property, nobody can say you can't do that. Right now, there are these these agencies, like your transportation agencies and some county agencies, that say you can't do that for this reason or other. And well, that would wipe all that away. So that's actually something that looks like it will probably get a good fare here in our state legislature, and that's positive. So that could be, you know, and then the city just passed ordinances recently, just the other night. Well, the planning and zoning did. It goes on to the city council, which I'm sure that they'll pass it because it's, you know, they're getting behind it. Is that they're now freeing up the regulations for beekeeping and how many chickens and livestock you can have here in the Boise City. So that's a positive note. Those things are changing positively. So, but they will have to be ramped up. And I think that in situation, I would expect that these governments, and I would actually expect Boise City, knowing the temperament of the city council, and that they would probably dictate that we build a local-based agrarian, you know, economy as fast as we possibly could. We did this once before during World War II. There were victory gardens. Well, that's what we'll do again, except these will be just survivor gardens. You know, you will have a garden in the front of your house. No more lawns. I think that will go away because, you know, we'll have to eat.
I first became aware of techno-utopia in, let's see, it would have been 2003. I kind of became aware of that with biotechnology is going to be the next big thing, and then after that will be nanotechnology, and then after that will be artificial intelligence, and then our consciousness will be uploaded into these spiritual machines, and it'll be something else. So you know, I guess deep down I believe that may be technically possible. But how we get through the short-term issues to make all of that possible, I'm having a tough time seeing right now. Perhaps the plan of the elite is to just save these little pockets of science and innovation so that after the rest of the world dies off, maybe those small pockets, you know, they're still continuing Moore's Law and continually increasing efficiencies of machines to the point where some sort of techno-utopia is possible, but you'd somehow have to protect those small pockets so that research and development could continue.